Welcome to L-EAF.org presentation. L-EAF.org, the Learning, Educational, Agile Framework, changing the way learning and education gets done. Hello, my name is Jeff Burstein. I am co-founder of IQ for Agile, as well as a team lead at L-EAF.org, that's spelled L-EAF.org, where we are currently working on our minimal testable solution of version 1 of the Learning Educational Agile Framework, an innovative and unique approach to scaling Agile designed specifically to meet the complexities of the educational systems. In keeping with the theme of the day, Agile Mindset, over the next 30 minutes, I will be taking you on an overview of the L-EAF scaling framework and discussing how this educational scaled framework is designed to address the complexities of education. But before I do, I've invited a friend of mine from the Center of Higher Educational Leadership to provide us with her viewpoint as to why the educational sector has reached the tipping point for their own Agile scaling framework.
Hi, I'm Terry Gibbons, the CEO and founder of the Center for Higher Education Leadership. Today, I want to talk to you just a little bit about the context of what is happening in higher education today. For many years, higher education has had a lack of innovation and a lack of a focus on students. And so one of the things we're doing with a more agile focused approach to leadership is trying to be more student-centered. And what does that mean to be more student-centered? Basically, in higher education, most people who, like me, who come from the faculty and have gotten their graduate degrees at large research institutions, didn't really learn how to teach or even how to be leaders. And that's one of the reasons I started the Center for Higher Education Leadership, was to help faculty to understand what are the aspects of leadership in higher education that they need to understand. But the other component of it is that we haven't really learned how to be teachers. And so when I started in higher education, I had to really focus on what does it mean to teach? And I had to really do a lot of that on my own with some help from the Center for Teaching and Learning. And so I think one of the things we have to think about in higher education today is not only how to be agile around innovation, but also agile around teaching. I'm going to focus a little bit more now on being agile in leadership because, of course, most institutions are facing some kind of budget crisis right now. And as I said before, that budget crisis started long before the COVID crisis. Public institutions are seeing cuts in their state funding. Private institutions are seeing enrollment declines, increased costs for a variety of reasons. And one of the things that I've seen in my own path to leadership is that I didn't really understand a lot of the different components that could help us learn to cut costs. And so I spent a lot of time over the last few years trying to understand things like what was going on in the ed tech sector, what were some of the new and innovative approaches to leadership. And what I found is that there's a whole ecosphere out there of people who are talking a lot about these issues, but not necessarily reaching the people they need to reach. And so that's another focus for people like me and Jeff and Brian, is to try to get a bridge between people who are working in administration and higher education and those of us who are out there in the discussion forums and talking about these things in all the major education newsletters and so on, and also people who are doing education technology, because education technology is going to be an important component for innovation as we go forward. But part of the issue is how do we get to a good decision point for what kinds of software and data approaches we want to use. And that really requires a lot of transparency with the faculty, with staff, and so on. And that's why I really like the Agile approach, because with an Agile approach, you can create teams that can quickly make pivots. They can look at different options, and it's really about being willing to fail. And I don't mean the fail in the sense of, closing your institution, but willing to fail in the sense that we're going to try something, we're going to do new things, we're going to do iterations. And I think that's a really important component of what has to happen in higher ed going forward. We're in an era when higher ed has to change. There's just no doubt about it. We don't know how long the COVID crisis is going to last. We don't know how long we're going to be online. And it's really going to be critical that we are able to take the time to make those decisions in a way that incorporates all the people who are involved, need to be involved in those decisions, including students, faculty, staff, and the leadership. And really, leadership is the key component, but they can't forget that they have to include all the stakeholders. It's really important, I think, that higher ed leaders do what has been happening in the business sector for many years. Everybody I talk to in the business sector, I ask them, hey, do you know about Agile? And of course they do. In higher ed, there hasn't been even though we teach in some instances Agile in business colleges and schools and so on, but we don't really know we don't utilize things like Agile. And part of the issue there too is taking both short-term, medium-term, and long-term approaches to things. So that means that sometimes we have to make decisions quickly, but we also need to be thinking about the long term. And so that's going to have a set of plans. We think about strategic planning, but we need to be able to adjust. So it's having the short, medium, and long term, but willingness to figure out when do we need to make an adjustment, when do we need to pivot, when do we need to make those next steps that are going to take us to a more innovative and student-centered place. So for me, I think that it's going to be important for folks in higher ed to learn, to understand, to listen to folks like Jeff and Brian. And I hope that we can help you in your next steps for improving your institution.
Thank you, Terry. And it was out of this need that we started working on the framework. And as with all frameworks, we started with a mission. And the mission at L-EAF is simple. We want to bring the mindset, the philosophy, the practices of agility to the educational sector. Our intention is to provide students and parents, educators, staff, leadership, and alliances with the governance, the structure, the training, and the framework that they need in order to turn our traditional educational institutions into student-focused centers of education. Our intention and our primary goal is to empower educational institutions that are built upon the core values of collaboration, adaptability, transparency, integrity, and an openness to change, all for the benefit of the student. Our framework was built on 4 pillars, and those pillars are simply teaching agility, institutional agility, student agility, and lean agile leadership. At the center of the 4 pillars, we have the student, where they are surrounded by the learning cycle, an empirical, scientific approach to learning, where students are responsible for their own journey. The role mindset plays in the 4 pillars is extremely critical. In the pillar of teaching agility, we are looking for teachers to pivot. We are no longer expecting teachers to teach, rather, we want students to learn. Teachers are simply providing the guide rails. They are providing the experience, and they are providing the contextual information that the students need in order to go on their learning journey. Inside of institutional agility, we leverage system thinking. It is also important to keep in mind that when we're looking at it, we include the socioeconomic approach to management, which is a very unique approach to identifying costs and hidden costs within institutions. At our foundation, we have student agility and lean agile leadership. Within student agility, we are looking for students to take ownership of their education. We value a meaningful education over the measurement of education. And therefore, we expect that when students are learning in an agile educational environment, that they are taking more than just the knowledge of the subject with them. They are actually bringing meaningful experiences at the conclusion of this journey into the workforce. And then finally, At the other cornerstone, we have lean agile leaders, and I believe that we all know the importance that they play in any transformation. Lean agile leaders, for some of you, you may recognize these characteristics. After all, lean agile leaders share a lot of these common characteristics. We want leaders who can lead the change, who are willing to do the things, to do the work that it takes in order to have the transformation be successful. In a lot of cases, what we have learned by doing transformations in government and business is that while the organization changes, leadership prefers to stay the same. Well, in the educational framework of agility, we are stressing the importance that leaders must change first, and therefore that is how they will lead the change, by implementing the change at the leadership levels first. Mindset and principles, we know how important those are. Understanding the mindset and how to live it, right? Where we value things like failure because it's an opportunity to learn. Living the principles, where we try to identify opportunities to put people over process or put a meaningful education over the measurement of an education. And finally, we want lean agile leaders who can lead by example. In some cases, that may mean making sacrifice. In our business transformation world right now, we are coaching our leaders to incorporate agile transformation into the objectives that people are building out for next year as they go ahead and work on their personal improvement plans to take them through 2021. Next, we ended up with our student-focused value delivery system. It provides any educational institution going through the transformation with a simple set of governance and steps that they can take in order to implement this framework. We call it our 4x6x6 model because it includes 4 roles, 6 steps, and has 6 outputs. The 4 roles are the traditional Scrum 3, someone responsible for the delivery of value or a Scrum Master, someone responsible for aligning the team on the vision or a product owner, and then finally the team members. We have added to that at every level of the organization the idea of a student advocate, the person whose responsibility it is to make sure that regardless of the team that they're working with, whether it's a team working to deliver specific value directly to the student or a leadership team creating the vision and mission for the organization for the next several years, that the voice of the student is heard. The 6 steps: refinement, taking our work from raw to ready. Planning, where as teams of teams, we align on what it is we will be delivering during the course of an increment. The synchronization over risks and dependencies so that teams can manage any cross-team dependencies and risks are highlighted and brought up to the department and leadership level. Collaboration, where teams get down to doing the work of the work, regardless of the level of the organization that they are at. Right? Leaderships are doing refinement, preparing for what's coming on the horizon, looking 2-3 years out, while people at the value delivery team level may actually be working on how do we get our students back into class for the winter semester. We have feedback where at each level of the organization, we are allowed to provide guidance on how to improve the results of what came out. And finally, an opportunity to reflect and improve and build up a improvement backlog. Our 6 outputs are fairly simple. You have the value delivery system itself. You have the improvement backlog, which came out of your reflect and improvement. Your refinement Kanban, the system by which you take your work from raw to ready. Your work backlog, which is a culmination of all the work that you have ready to be delivered. The plan itself, and finally, the risk and dependency board. And then we come to one of the things that makes our system truly unique from any other scaling agile approach, which is the inclusion of a transformation system. What makes this transformation system so valuable and provides so much benefit is that it is a step-by-step, iterative and interactive approach to preparing an organization and its leadership for the transformation. It allows for a logical, growth-oriented approach to scaling Agile by providing discovery along the way that aligns very well with any transformation. From the perspective of mindset, the transformation system takes the practitioner on a learning journey, right, which allows them and aligns with the Shu-Ha-Ri approach of crawl, walk, run, providing educational leaderships a collaborative approach for moving from knowledge to understanding as they move through the building out of their transformational roadmap and continually progress their organizations and institutions forward. Built in the discovery process, which allows for the journey to unfold as we learn more, the foundation of readiness leads us right into our virtual system design, where leaders can actually test systems before they bring them out, and then scaling all the way through until we get to the learning and evolve portion, where we have now reached mastery over the transformation system, and we continue to introduce improvements over time. And so that brings us back to where we were when we started. Education has reached the tipping point, right? We have seen where enrollments are down, operating costs are up, there's reduced revenues. And now when you add in the complexities of a pandemic and the need to pivot, education is really at a tipping point where we can either change or who knows what. We've seen in the news that educational institutions are merging, are closing. And it is an agile approach at the end of the day, which will allow these institutions to identify waste, to reduce expenses, and to, at the end of the day, deliver value back to their students. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope you found the information valuable. Thank you.